Hey, welcome back, everybody. This week we are going to talk about your outline and evaluation form that we're going to use for this class. We have three major speeches, as you know, and all of those will use the same outline. Now, we will use Monroe's motivated sequence for both persuasive speeches, but the outline, the actual structure of the speech, will be the same. Also, the evaluation form will always be the same. So, the idea for today is to walk you through what that looks like, what everything means on the outline and the evaluation form. And I want to also show you how those two things are designed to work together. In other words, if you follow the outline, you are going to be in good shape just sort of naturally because of the way the evaluation form is structured. So let's take a look over at our syllabus and course pack after I get back to it. And first, let's start with the schedule. This is week 4. Don't forget this week, your topic and sources are due. To remind you, I know I posted about this in the announcements, but be sure that you remember that you need to use the worksheets from the course pack that we have up here. I'll show you those again in just a second. But you don't need to do anything oral. There's somewhere apparently I left in you're going to present these, and that would be the case if we were in a face-to-face class. But since we are virtual and asynchronous, it's really fine if we just do the worksheets. The idea with doing it aloud in a classroom while we're all together is that we can all offer some feedback or guidance or things that we may have seen that could help other people, and we'll still do that to a degree with some of the work that we do, but it's just not as cut and dry in this new online environment. What I will also remind you of, in addition to this being due this week, is that next week we will go a step further with the outline, and I will actually do an outline for you. I will start with a blank outline, the one that we'll look at today, and then in less than an hour, we will go from blank to completely finished and have time for a practice run of the speech. And that's to show you that, while it may take you longer than that on your first or second or even third go around with this, that once you sort of internalize the structure that we're using and it becomes very natural to you, you can really come up with a speech quite quickly. And so we'll look at how that can be done. Also, by next week, by the end of next week, you need to go to the speech lab for your tour. So far, I think only one person across both classes has done that. So make sure that you go. Again, you can go to gvsu.edu/speech-lab, and that will take you where you need to be. Matter of fact, since we're here, let me show you that. It's always fun when you're on the spot. So here, let's get out of all this stuff. This is gvsu.edu/speech-lab. And we are open virtually. As I said, we're not in person, but if you just click this big picture, enter the virtual speech lab here, you can go directly into our Google Meet room where all the consultants are when it's our operating hours. So you can go there. If you want to schedule an appointment, you can use this. You want to do a drop-in, it's the same idea. You'll go through Book It. And if you're not sure how to use Book It and you need some information on that, you can go there. And there is a link to a video that tells you exactly how to use Book It. All right. So you should be good to go on your tour. Again, the only goal of the tour really is to get you to go through the process I just described, talk with a consultant for a few minutes, and make sure that you're ready and you're on the right path in terms of knowing how to use the services. Okay, let's jump down to last week just so that we can take a quick look at the worksheets that are due this week. So here are those. So again, what is your topic? You're going to tell us what your topic is, how you will discuss it informatively and specifically to Grand Valley. Same thing for the persuasive speech. And then why is it relevant to the audience? That's probably the most important thing other than just what is your topic, because you need to make sure that this is a topic that the audience will care about. Go back and rewatch last week. We talked about making sure your topic is timely, relevant, appropriate, that sort of things, controversial. And so make sure that the audience is clear on why they care. As for the middle two columns with being informative and persuasive, you don't have to be specific yet. Really, the point right now is just to know that you have a general idea of what you will discuss when it comes to your topic. Nothing needs to be set in stone. That is still in the future. And then the other part of that worksheet is here, and this is for your sources. So you're going to give me some sort of a citation over here. All this information would be great, but at the minimum, remember, we need to have the date and the publication. We need to know why it's credible. If it's in a peer-reviewed journal, you could just tell us that much, and that's fine. Otherwise, we need to know a little more about why that source is useful and we should trust it. Then tell us a little bit about how you plan to use it. That doesn't mean you have to use it that way or at all in the speeches, but you can. And so give us some information there. And then last, give us some specifics from that piece that you want to use or that at least caught your attention. Again, it can be something that you may or may not stick with moving forward, but the idea for this assignment isn't so much that you lock yourself into 3 sources. It's that you're able to find 3 different types of sources. So go back, look at the instructions up in the syllabus where those are all listed, and that will tell you what types of sources you need, and make sure to get that in by the end of the week. Okay, so weeks 4 and 5, we're kind of talking about the same thing, and I mentioned that it's the outline and then the evaluation form. So we'll do the demonstration next week, but let's go ahead and take a look at the outline and the eval form. What you'll see when you get to this, page 27 in your course pack, is a few different things. One, you've got an outline that fits neatly onto one page. Don't worry, yours won't once you're finished. I made it in a Word document purposefully so that you can go in and add to what's already here. You don't need to recreate this in some other format. Please don't recreate this in some other format. Use this. That's why it's here for you. So you can just go in literally and start typing, whatever you want your attention getter to be. If you go past that, you'll see this form, which is the outline, but now it has some text that explains what each item does, what it is, what it does, what it's for. And we'll talk about those in just a moment. And so you'll see that listed. And then last, you'll see the evaluation form. And so we're going to go through this actually first because I want to show you as we move back to the outline how much of this is already built into your outline. So when I was putting this together, quite a while ago, we'll say, it struck me that some students were either really good at speaking, but maybe not so great at the written elements. Other students were really good at the written elements, but not so great at the speaking elements. And then, of course, some students are good at both or not so great at both. And so what I tried to do was make a fair evaluation form that balanced sort of the pre-work, the written part, if you will, with the actual speech, the delivery, the in the moment work, if you will. So this is what I came up with. Number 1, did you select and narrow a topic appropriately for the audience with an occasion, central idea, or a specific purpose statement? You'll see when we go to the outline that those things are built into your outline. The central idea, specific purpose. You should already, by the time you get to the speech anyway, already have narrowed down that topic. And this shouldn't be a big issue for you. So that first item should be an excellent. And by the way, since we're here, let's talk about what these mean over here on this right side. An excellent is 4 points. Each of these are worth maybe or a possible total of 4 points. So excellence 4, very good's 3, good is 2, fair is 1, poor is 0. Then if you look at the bottom, we've got 8 items with 4 points possible. That's 32 possible points. What I will do is go through, add up your points, and then put them here. and divide that by 32, and that gives us a percent. And then I'll multiply that by 0.15, 0.25, whatever that speech is worth, 15 points, 25 points. And that's how I get the grade that goes into the book for you. You should also know that I do curve these. So what I curve, though, is this raw score that would go right here beside 32. And that's where you'll see the bump. Normally that's 1 point, sometimes as much as 3 or 4, but I wouldn't bet on more than 1 just to be safe. Now, again, these will all just add up, and from there it's just math. So then the first item, you should be good to go on that once you see the outline. Matter of fact, while we're here, we've got central idea and purpose statement. Let's go up. Let's see. We've got thesis statement or the central idea right there. Oops, I don't want to move it. Then you've got the purpose statement or statement of purpose right there. So again, this should be done. Then organization is clear and logical. You followed the outlined format. Take a look here. Attention getter, statement of purpose, thesis, relevance, main point preview, 1, 2, 3, transitions between main points, 1, 2, 3. Then in the conclusion, statement of purpose, thesis statement, relevance, closure. And then C2A is call to action. That's in parentheses because that is only for the persuasive speeches with Monroe's. But in terms of all this other stuff, look at this. You go up to the top, attention getter, statement of purpose, thesis statement, relevance, preview of main points, transition. Then you've got your main points, transitions between those main points. You go to your conclusion. There's the review of the statement of purpose, review of the thesis, review of the main points, and closure. It's all right there. So if you complete the outline and then present everything that you completed aloud in the speech, you're going to be good to go there too. Number 3 is going back to what we're doing that's due anyway this week, and that is your topic and sources, specifically the sources. So this says that you've provided appropriate supporting material, number and type of sources. They're clear citations, including at least publication and date. So go back and look at each speech's requirements when it's time, and that will tell you you need 1 peer-reviewed journal article or 2 peer-reviewed journal articles, depending on the speech. And then you need other credible sources, so news that's reputable, statistics, whatever it might be. We covered all that last week. But here is where you will, where I will take note of the sources that you cite, how you cite them, and then if you have all your sources and they're cited well, great, it's excellent. And again, that is stuff that you will plan out before you ever sit down to record the video. Now, also remember from the very first day we talked in the syllabus video, if you do not cite any sources in your speeches, I have to give you a 0. It's plagiarism to give a speech on a topic and use information that was found somewhere and not give credit at all. So don't do that. That's the only way that you can really plagiarize in this class, and it's been done quite a few times. So don't get caught up in that. That will really just torpedo your grade. I mean, you know, when it's 15 points out of 100 that are just gone, you really put yourself at a bad spot. Excuse me. Next up, number 4, uses language that's appropriate to the audience. That includes style, jargon, and avoids vocal fillers. Pardon me, I got a little tickle. So, here, what we're looking for is that the language you're using isn't too formal or too informal for your topic. Now, one of my areas of interest when it comes to research is slang use. Specifically, I like to learn more about slang and how people use it specifically in the classroom. So, as an example, if you use slang in your speech, I'm not the one that's going to take points off for that. However, if you overuse it, that's when the points would come off. People often ask about, vulgarity or cursing or whatever. If it's appropriate and it works for what you're discussing, I really don't care. But again, if it's overloaded with this stuff is when it becomes distracting and problematic. It's the same though if you think about these vocal fillers. By the way, a vocal filler is like, you know, those moments where you pause and make it vocalized. There's nothing wrong with doing that, by the way. I'm not telling you this because I'm going to count them and I have some method, you know, oh, you've got 16 vocal fillers, so that's 8 points off. And if you, no, that's not how that works. Some folks teach the class that way. I do not. The only time I really take note of those vocal fillers is if it distracts me from your message. If that happens, what I usually do is I will tally how many you use in about a minute of time. So I will put a timestamp on this sheet for you, like, you know, maybe you're at the 2-minute 38-second mark. And from there, I will count how many you use. And then at 3 minutes and 38 seconds, I will stop. And that's just to give you sort of a snippet. So you can imagine if you use 25 in 1 minute and it's a 5-minute speech, you're over 100. You know, you're 125 ums. And that's problematic. But here and there, it's normal. It's natural. Don't sweat it. The only way to know if you do this, use these vocal fillers, is to listen to yourself or have other people listen to you. I recommend recording yourself and sort of forgetting about being aware of ums, uhs, likes, and you knows, and then go back and watch it just for that one time through and see where those bumps are. And what you can also learn from that is that if there is one section of the speech that you have more ums, uhs, likes, and you knows, that probably means that you're not as familiar or comfortable with that part of the speech and that you should go back and try again. Now, the fourth item here, what's where we are? Oh, that's what I wanted to hit. Jargon. Jargon is specialty language that's used in a particular field. So, you know, if you're in the medical industry, there's language that you use that other people probably wouldn't understand right away. There's lingo, it's lots of abbreviations and that sort of stuff. We want to make sure that since we have this general audience in the class, that if we are using anything like this, that we really are careful to either take it out and replace it with something else, or that we explain it briefly if there's no other way to replace it. So be aware of those sorts of words. Again, if you're familiar with your topic, and I hope you are, then it might be natural for you to use some of these terms. So I'm thinking of an example like in the medical field, the word stent. A stent is a small piece of wire or plastic or metal mesh that expands an artery or a vein so that blood can flow through freely if you've got a clog in there. And, you know, there's no other word for that. So if you're using that and you're concerned that your audience may not be familiar, just take that extra 4 seconds maybe and explain it. So, you know, the doctors inserted a stent or a medical device that allows blood to flow through an artery or vein. And when they did that, they found that, and then you're moving on. That's it. That's all you need. We don't need to get into the history of stents, how they're put in the body, what they're made of, all that. It's fine, right? Just give us a quick definition we can satisfy our curiosity with and move on. The danger of not doing that is not only just seeming less credible because the audience couldn't follow, but if you say the word stent and people think, I've heard that before, what does that mean? Now for the rest of the speech, maybe they're racking their brain trying to remember where they've heard it and in what context. And meanwhile, they're not paying attention to you anymore. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen and that we're using appropriate language. Now, all of this stuff you can largely prepare for. Number 4 is a little bit of a blend because it does include the vocal fillers, but the overall language that you use, that should be planned out ahead of time. So here's where we're switching over now from working ahead, sort of that legwork, to the actual speech itself. And that gets us to number 5. Uses variety in rate, pitch, and pause to maintain interest. We're going to cover what all this means in a lot more depth later, But for now, just know that you can't be monotone. You can't run through a speech or crawl through a speech. You need to have quality delivery. And so I'll look for that. And again, explain it soon before we have to go through the actual speaking process. And, that's what I'll be looking for there. Number 6, similar, clear pronunciation, correct grammar, quality articulation, and adequate volume. So can we understand you? And can we make out what you're saying because it's clear and it's loud enough? This is something that you should definitely do some test runs on. Record yourself, not in a whole speech. Just do a couple tests, the literal test 1, 2, 3, and see how loud your speech is. Because if something is some element of the speech, let's say it's the transition between two main points, it may be there, but if I can't hear it, I can't give you credit for it. I mean, I don't have a transcript of what you're saying. I'm listening just like we would in a classroom. So, if it's too quiet for me to pick up, even with my volume maxed out, and I'll do that, trust me, it's not going to count for you. So make sure that you're loud and clear. Now, that doesn't mean scream at us, but you're able to be understood. Number 7 is all about nonverbals. So appropriate movement, gestures, posture, as well as eye contact. Again, we'll go back through this soon, but we'll talk about how you can still move in a recorded speech. You may not move as much, but you can still move. Gestures, you still need those. They need to be visible. We'll talk about posture. That's still important. I mean, this versus that. Neither one of those are ideal for me. I want you to mix it up a little bit, because in a speech that if you were standing, if you're able, of course, you wouldn't be the whole time like this, like you're speaking to royalty, but the whole time you're not going to be doing this either, right? Like you're just too cool for school. So again, more on that soon, but make sure to keep that in mind and plan these things out. Plan your gestures if you're not familiar. Eye contact becomes camera contact. This sort of stuff. Be careful. Last but not least, the time, and then you've got PowerPoint in parentheses. So all that will matter for number 8 is the time that it takes you to get through this speech. If you're within that window, great. I'll write your time down and you'll get excellent. If you're not within that window, I'll write that time down and take off, the appropriate number of points based on 30-second increments. So if you're 1 to 29 seconds over, you lose a point. If you're 30 to 59 seconds over, you lose 2 points. If you're a minute to a minute and 29, you see how we're going there. And that's over or under. Then when we get to the persuasive speeches, the last persuasive speech, you'll have a PowerPoint. And this is where I will also evaluate your PowerPoint. And again, much more on that down the road when it's time. So this is the form I use. If it's not on here, I don't grade for it. There have been times where I was thinking to myself, boy, this person made a B on their speech, but it really was not a very good speech because of something I didn't include on this grade form. Oh, well, that's not your fault. So I'm not going to count you down for that, because what I want you to be able to do is to practice and then go back and watch yourself with this form in front of you. When you can do that, you'll be able to often see where the issues are that need to be corrected. Now, we've talked about the evaluation form, but let's jump back up and talk about this outline. Again, the version with the red font, the red text here, is going to give you sort of my notes on what we're going to talk about here, and it's going to give you some examples. But we'll just kind of work our way through it together and talk about the different parts. First thing to note is this: start speaking here. What you'll see here, name, topic, and purpose. That's just for bookkeeping. That's just to have, okay, whose outline am I looking at? What are they talking about again? Is this for an informative or a persuasive speech? That's it. You don't need to say that in the speech at the top. Okay? So start speaking here with the attention getter. Now, an attention getter is vital. So many people don't do it the right way. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that in a couple different forms. But first, look at this. Here is the self and topic introduction, where you tell people your name and what you're talking about. Note that that does not come first. That is second. That's after the attention getter. So Many people will, all of you, I'm sure, have heard a speech at least where the speaker starts out with, "Hi, my name is, and today I'm going to talk to you about," and then they move to the speech. That's wrong. Don't do that. Start with your attention getter. So how do you do that? And why do you need to do it first? Well, if you grab the audience's attention right away, it's so much easier to keep their attention as you move through. However, the longer you wait to try to grab their attention or to effectively grab their attention, the more likely you are that they're going to tune you out at some point and start thinking about other things. And that's not what you want. And if you say your name first, this sounds strange to some people, and I get it, but even your name can be a distraction. What? Right? I mean, we'll just use my name as an example. Carl, C-A-R-L, right? Think of pop culture. Who is named Carl in media, TV, movies, books, that kind of stuff? Give you a second here. The ones that come to mind for me are Coral from The Walking Dead, right? Rick and his son, and Coral. So that's not something that I want people to be thinking of right off the top. Now they're thinking about The Walking Dead. There's that llama cartoon, right? Coral, do you know that kills people? If you haven't seen that, Google Carl the llama kills people. That's not what I want you to think of. Carl is also the rather deranged groundskeeper on Caddyshack, one of my favorite movies. But again, that's not where I want your mind when I'm giving you a speech. Carl is the name of the killer in Sling Blade, who, great movie and a very lovable character in some strange way, but he's also not mentally competent, and so I don't want you thinking of that. You see where I'm going with this, right? There's no Carl that people think of and they're just like, oh yeah, no, Carl, that's awesome. It just doesn't happen. And so I don't want people to think of that. Now, maybe your name is much more popular, we'll say, and it's something that maybe everybody has heard, or we all know someone named whatever, Hannah. With that name, the danger is, what if someone's ex is named Hannah? And you say first thing, "Hi, my name's Hannah, and today I want to talk to you about," and then they start thinking, "Hannah, oh man, what? That all went wrong. I can't believe she did that to me. I mean, of all the things I did," right? And now they're just lost. They're gone. They're not with you anymore. So get the attention first. How do you do that? You've got some options. And I'm going to jump down here because I give you some examples. One thing you can do is use a story. And I'm going to save that until the end because that works really, really well with Monroe's motivated sequence for the persuasive speeches. But for the very first speech that you have coming up, the informative, you can use it, but it's not as vital. So other things that are a little more cut and dry would be a shocking statistic or a fact. So one example of this is a true statement that is rather scary. 1 in 4 of you listening to this right now, 1 in 4 of you in this class has, not will have, but has an STD. Think about it. 1 in 4 of you has an STD. So go to the class list, look at your name, the person above you, the person below you, and then just pick another random name. One of you has an STD. Is it you? Are you sure? How do you know? Right? So now if my goal is to get you to start thinking about STD awareness or dangers of unprotected sex or whatever it might be, it's on your mind now. Because if you're in a classroom especially and you start counting people, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you see where I'm going, right? So that will grab an audience's attention. Anything that will sort of shake them up a little bit, give them some information, maybe either that's new to them or they're thinking about it in a new way, is going to be an effective attention getter. Let me be very clear. It needs to relate to your topic. So I really I've had this happen before, y'all, or I wouldn't tell you this. But I gave that example of the 1 in 4 in STDs, and somebody was talking about something completely different. Like, I don't know, I'm looking around to make something up here, but the importance of good lighting. And, it was 1 in 4 of you have an STD. Is it you? Are you sure? Hi, my name is, and today I'm going to talk to you about good lighting on online presentations. Like, the hell does that have to do with anything? And it didn't connect, and so it's not effective. It will confuse the audience. I don't think I need to tell you that, but just in case. Another way to get attention is to use a question. Now, there are 2 good ways and 1 bad way to do this. And luckily for you, the bad way is sort of eliminated in this format of being online. So the effective ways are to ask show of hands questions. So you might ask someone, raise your hand if you've ever done this thing, and then see what happens. How many hands go up? It's always a good idea to then follow that up with a question that starts with, keep your hand raised if, or put your hand down if. Now, what that does is get the audience not only thinking about your question, they have to process it, but now they're physically interacting with you. It's just a hand raise, I get that, but it's that investment that people are putting in to physically cooperate that will make them stay connected to you as you speak. So, show of hands questions are great. Rhetorical questions can be, but they can also flop. So if you're not familiar, a rhetorical question is one that you ask and you don't really want an answer, but you still may pause as though you're waiting for one just to give people time to think. So it could be something like, what if I told you that tomorrow every one of us would find ourselves fully vaccinated against the COVID virus? How would you feel? Well, if you're like most Americans, and then you move on, but now they're thinking, right? The way not to use a question is to ask an actual question that wants an actual verbal response. Again, that's eliminated here, but I would be letting you down and selling you short if I didn't give you this information. When you go back to in-person presentations, and it'll happen, I know that we'll do more and more online, but there will be another time for you to do an in-person presentation. Never ask a question that you want someone to really respond to. Why not? Well, you probably have a time limit, like for these speeches. And if that person wants to talk and they are really into your question, they're really pouring their heart out, it's going to look really bad if you make them stop so that you can continue. But if you don't make them stop, you're going to run out of time. You may also run into the opposite, and that is where you ask a question and no one answers it. Or you ask a question and someone raises their hand, so tell me about a time when you were on vacation. Somebody last year. Oh, okay, great. Where did you go? Up north. What part of north? UP. Okay, what'd you do up there? Hung out basically. That's not the answer you want either, because that's not going to make your speech flow very well. So take this unknown, the audience's verbal response is unknown, out of the equation. Some people will say, well, put a plant in the audience. So get someone and say, I'm going to ask this question and I want you to answer it. That really only works in very unique situations, and that's even questionable. But let's just assume that you'll never be able to really do that, and don't count on it. So we'll stay away from that one as well. Back to the list here, you have humor as your next one. Humor can work. It can also be totally out of place. So you'll need to ask yourself a few questions. First one is this topic humorous? Now, hear me on this. I am the type of person that I think there is humor in almost everything. Somewhere it's there. You may have to look a little harder for it than others. Not everything, but most things. A lot of folks don't think like me. And so if I used humor in a place where other people might see it as inappropriate, I will lose my audience. Not only will I lose them, they won't like me. And when they don't like you, they won't listen. When they don't listen, they won't act. And you have just sunk your ship from the start. Now, if you ask this question and you say, oh no, this has a clearly humorous element to it, and I'm going to use that. Okay, great. That's question one. Question two, are you funny? True. If you have to think too long on that, you're not funny. If you're not sure, you probably aren't funny. And if you think, do I laugh longer than other people when I tell jokes? If the answer is yes, you're not funny. Or if you're not sure, you're not funny. Funny people know they're funny. A lot of people who aren't funny think they're funny, but they're not. So I really need you to be honest with yourself about yourself and your topic when it comes to trying to use humor. I've had a guy once give a speech on breast cancer, and he started it out. What did one tumor say to the other? I don't remember the answer because I was enraged. My mom was dealing with cancer at that time. And all I could think of was, how dare you joke about this? Even me. And so you just never know with that audience how they're going to feel unless it's obviously funny. Now, to go back to the first one with a story. Stories are beautiful attention getters. You can use them a number of different ways. I'll give you two examples of things that work really well. The first one is called misdirection. Now, what misdirection means is that you start telling a story and it seems like that story is going to go in one direction, but all of a sudden, as the actual attention getting hook, you switch directions. So an example might be, trying to think of an older lady's name. Shirley was an 84-year-old grandmother of 6. She loved her family, her grandkids, her kids, and everyone came together on most Sundays to her house. And that's an important thing to say because she still lived alone. Not because her family didn't want her. No, not at all. They had asked her to come and stay with them. But she liked her independence. And on this particular day, she was doing what she always did in her independent life. She woke up, she got her newspaper, and then she started to make breakfast. But this day, something was different. A killer was watching her, and they were going to strike. Shirley made her breakfast, and she sat down at the table. She read the paper and ate as she did every morning, but the killer saw this and moved closer to striking. As she picked her plate up and folded the newspaper, she took her plate to the sink, and when she set it down, back to the world, the killer struck. She fell to her knees, felt the impact, and then passed. Hi, I'm Carl, and today I want to tell you about heart disease. Heart disease is the number one killer. You see where I'm going with this? People are thinking, oh my God, who is this terrible bastard about to kill poor Shirley? But in reality, this is a disease speech. And so you could use something like that, because if you start out and say, oh, heart disease is something serious. It is. It really is a serious issue. But for people in your audience, the college age, most people don't care yet. I mean, just don't. It's not going to affect you, chances are. Maybe someone you love, but not you directly. And so getting that attention is vital early, and that's one way to do it. The other way that you can use a story is to, and this is my favorite, start the story and get to a climactic sort of cliffhanging moment. Stop telling the story, give the speech, and then at the end, come back and finish the story. This will make the audience stay with you because they're wanting to know what happens at the end of the story. So the best example I've ever seen of this was at a collegiate speaking competition. It was the state tournament in Tennessee. This is in like 2008, maybe. I was one of the judges, and we got to the final round. We've got 5 of the top 5 speakers in the state, and here they go. They're doing their thing. The last guy gets up to speak and starts out with a story, and his speech was on truth. So scientific truth, spiritual truth, and personal truth. But he starts out by saying something to the effect, and I'll do a quick version, but it was, there was a young boy who moved to this country with his parents from Mexico. They wanted to live the American dream, and that's what they worked hard to do. Both the mother and the father worked two jobs. They were hardly ever at home. And the little boy, though he wishes he could see his parents more, he knew that they were doing what they were doing because of him. They wanted a better life for him. And he decided he wanted to get involved. So the little boy noticed a rusted out lawnmower in the neighbor's yard, and he asked if he could clean it up and borrow it. The neighbor said, "Look, kid, if you can make this thing run, you can have it. It's just taking up my space." So the boy and his father, for the next few weeks, when they did have a few moments together, worked on the lawnmower. They got it in working order, and the little boy started mowing lawns. Now, he was only 8 years old, and so the neighbors really thought it was more just a cute thing than it was really someone working for them. But they would let him mow their front lawns, and he really just felt like he had a purpose. One day he was making a pass, the final pass in a lawn that he was mowing. He went to the end of the yard, he rocked the mower back and went to turn for the final time. And when he set the mower back down, he heard a loud pop, he fell to the ground, and then he felt pain in the bottom of his right foot. Well, he looked down and his right foot was missing. The boy obviously screamed. The blade from the mower had come detached from the back and shot out, and it had severed his foot at the ankle. Now, the neighbor came out, she picked up the boy and his foot and contacted his mother on the way to the hospital. The mother met them there. The doctor came out and said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to amputate your son's leg. Not only is his foot in bad shape, we're afraid there could be an infection, and so we're going to take it off at the knee." The mother cried, and she said, "I don't believe this is true. I want a second opinion." Hi. And then he gets into the speech, right? Everybody's thinking, what the hell happened to this poor little boy? So at the end, he comes back. You're probably wondering what happened to the poor little boy. Well, when the mother asked for a second opinion, it was during a shift change, and another doctor had just come in, and he asked if he could take a look at the boy. When he did and came out, he had a different truth. He said, "Ma'am, we're not going to amputate your son's leg. I don't see any serious signs of infection. And because the neighbor acted quickly, I can reattach your son's foot. He will never have full use of it again, but he will be complete. If that's what you want, that's what I'll do." And then he steps out from behind the podium and he says, "And I'm so glad my mother did that for me back then, because I'm still standing on my own 2 feet in front of you today." And that was just something that really rocked the crowd, if you will. So then we got back to the final there, and the little boy, or the speaker, turns out he was the little boy. The guy says, "Okay, everybody's clapping and crying and doing all this." And I, being me, said, "I need to see your ankle." And he said, "What are you talking about? You need to see my ankle." And I said, "Yeah, I need to see it because I don't know that this story is true." And one of the rules is that you can make up stories. You can make up stories and say they're fictional. That's fine. But you can't make up stories and say they're about you. And so he said, "Okay, sure." Pulls his pant leg up, pulls his sock down. He had a scar all the way around his ankle. He was telling the truth the whole time. And I quickly cast my ballot and left, and I was never invited back again. But the bigger point there is that this use of a story to get to this cliffhanging moment, stop it, deliver the speech, and then finish the speech is really something that sounds and looks great. So of the attention getter options that you have, the story is one that works well, especially for the persuasive speeches. And then these others can work well as well for any speech. And they're a little easier to do, especially on the fly for most people. Okay, after you grab their attention, you are going to introduce yourself and your topic. That's just what it sounds like. "Hi, my name's Carl, and today I'm going to tell you about using an outline." Then you've got the statement of purpose. So by the end of this speech, you should what? Now look at this, because I want you to be very clear with this. I don't want you to sort of do your own version of this. Use these words. By the end of this speech, you should what? Know more about a topic? Well, yeah, that's an informative speech, very clearly. You should be more aware of informative speech. Great. However, if you say by the end of this speech, you should agree that, or you should take the position of something like that, that's clearly a persuasive speech. So let that shift based on the purpose of your speech. If your speech is, again, informative, make it just that. Educational, informative, here's this information. If it is something persuasive, that's a different sort of area, and you'll want to try to get the audience to agree with you. And you need to just be straightforward with this. A lot of folks, especially in the persuasive speeches, don't want to start out full frontal, right? They don't want to come out and say, "Here's what I believe, here's what I'm arguing for, you need to jump on board with me." But after you get the attention, that's exactly what you should do. Don't beat around the bush and sort of hedge and, "Oh, well, I want to tell you about lighting, and that it could be more important than you might think. Like, don't use that kind of language, that hesitancy. By the end of this, you should agree good lighting is important. And today I'm going to tell you why it is important and how you can get it. Clear as a bell. Now, the next item there is your thesis statement. This is no different than it is in English. You've been doing this for a long time. So when you think of your thesis statement, it's a single sentence summary, and that's important, one sentence only, that sort of encapsulates the entirety of your message, your speech. So what this should not be is a preview. It shouldn't be a list. It shouldn't be like, today I'm going to tell you all about lighting. First, I'll tell you about the types of bulbs you need, then how those bulbs work with your environment, and how all that finally appears on film. That's not it. That's going to be down here in this preview of main points, okay? That's a completely different area. So with that one, you're really going to find a way to boil things down into a single sentence. And so if it is that lighting speech, you might say, lighting is a key element of effective recordings. That takes care of all that without making a list. Don't overthink the thesis statement or the statement of purpose, okay? Think of it this way. This is one example that you can sort of go and check out other places. Think of your favorite movie. If you watch that on cable, or if you go to like IMDb, you will see a single sentence summary of that movie. Matter of fact, let's do that. One that I frequently use is Finding Nemo, just because it's popular. So we'll go to IMDb, International Movie Database, and we will put in Finding Nemo. Now, you've all seen it, I imagine, so I want you to think of how you would summarize the movie without giving everything away and putting it into a list. How would you do it? Well, the way that they have done it, let's click on it here, is this. After his son is captured in the Great Barrier Reef and taken to Sydney, a timid clownfish sets out on a journey to bring him home. That's it. There's no mention of Dory or the sharks or the jellyfish or the dentist's office, those areas of the movie that made the movie what it is. I mean, it's a pretty good movie. It's just not there. And the reason it's not there is because they don't want you to get everything from the thesis. That would be like if you go to Wikipedia and look at a plot summary. So let's do Finding Nemo, Wikipedia. We'll go here. And there we can look up the plot if we want. And this sort of gives us much more. You see all this. Think of this plot summary as the speech, the important information that you're going to share. And the other, the IMDb page, as that thesis statement, that single piece that captures what you're talking about, but it doesn't give everything away. By the way, last thing I'll say on thesis statement. This is new for a lot of people to think of it in terms of a speech. You've done it in papers a lot, but this could be time consuming. So do it last. Do it last. First of all, if you're trying to summarize something in a single sentence, that's difficult to do if the whole thing isn't finished yet. So you'll want to keep that in mind, to go back and do that at the very end. Also, what you may find is useful is if you start out using multiple sentences, maybe write 2 or 3 or 4 sentences, and then just go back, edit to get it down to a single sentence. It takes a little time, but once you get it, it's not that bad. And trust me, again, don't overthink it. Next up in the introduction is the relevance. Why do we, not you, we, the audience, care about this topic? And I want you to, again, say these words. You should care about this topic because, and then tell us why. You need to give us at least 2 reasons here that we should care about this topic. And sometimes these are more obvious than others. But with this class, we're talking about, national issues that we can start to impact here locally on campus. So with that in mind, there should be already at least one obvious connection that you can make. and, start with that and sort of work from there. You may need to think outside the box a little bit. As I mentioned last week's video, don't do things like requiring anyway, physical education courses in high school or elementary school. We've already been there and done that. We don't need to think backwards. Although some of us have children, me or will, many of you in the future, that's not a really good enough piece of relevance. We need to know why we care about it and why we care about it now. So even with a speech like that I'm telling you shouldn't do, you can make the argument that, children's health is important to everyone, because as taxpayers, if you have a job or if you're going to have one very, very soon, you're going to be paying for people's health care that don't carry insurance. And if kids are healthier, that means less of your tax money will go to paying for their medical costs. And that's a win for everyone. You could go that way, but again, it's got to be, with that example anyway, that's outside the box in the sense that it's not just about you should care about these little kids and their health. It's really you should care about your job and your money, and then you connect it to the little kids and their health. Right? So make sure that you're connecting those dots for the audience if you need to go into this sort of one or two steps removed relevancy from the actual topic. Next up under relevance, next to last thing anyway in the introduction, yes, we're still in the introduction, is the preview of main points. This is where you're going to give each main point a very brief name. 1 word, 2 words, a small phrase, no sentences, no more than maybe 5 words at most. Label those and then tell us what they are. So today I'll tell you about types of lighting, how that lighting may look in your environment, and finally we'll talk about how that lighting appears on screen when you are recording. That's it. That's all you need to do there. Do not give us a big summary. So some people want to say, so today I'm going to tell you about the different types of lighting, why I prefer some and you may prefer others, and how that's based on the environment, because my second point is that the environment matters, because if you have a light that's too much of this or too much that, you see where I'm going. It just gets too cumbersome. Give us the names. I'll tell you this, I'll tell you that, and I'll tell you this other thing. My finger's in the zone there. There is a saying in speech world that a good speaker will do 3 things. They tell you what they're going to tell you, they tell you, and then they tell you what they told you. And look at this. You've got the preview of main points here. They tell you what they're going to tell you. Then you've got the body where they tell you. And then you've got the conclusion where they tell you what they told you. You're going to do that. And it's going to, if you're not familiar with it, feel very repetitious. Because even between these main points, you're going to remind people what you just talked about before you talk about something new. Again, it's going to sound like you're repeating yourself, and you will be repeating yourself, but that's a good thing. In a paper, as a comparison, the reader can always flip backwards and see what they maybe missed or they didn't remember from earlier. In a speech, your audience can't do that. I mean, how annoying would it be if every speech or presentation that you've ever heard, somebody keeps asking, wait, what was the last thing you said? Wait, what did you say back there? Hold on. Didn't you say this there? Like, let them get through the speech. So as a speaker, if you continuously remind the audience where we are, where we're going, and where we've been, they're going to remember it better. They're going to internalize it better, and they're going to see you as more favorable. Because if you basically make a promise to them, if you say, today I'm going to tell you 1, 2, 3, and then you do it. And then at the end you show them, look, so today I told you 1, 2, 3. They may not even consciously connect dots, but somewhere in there, they're going to realize, hey, they said they were going to do something, and then they showed me that they did it. I like this person. I can trust them. And that's going to, again, make you more credible as a speaker. So don't gloss over that. Then last thing in the introduction, the transition. What I want you to do here is to signal that you're moving out of the introduction and into the body of the speech. And to do that, just use a signal term or a signal phrase like to begin, for starters, to jump into things, whatever you like. I've heard people get creative with this. So someone was talking about vacationing, and they were giving us 3 places in Michigan that are good for vacationing. And I think the way they did their transitions was maybe a little cheesy, but it was effective. So they said, all right, so without further ado, let's pack up the car and get on the road up north to Traverse City. And then they talked about it. Well, now that we visited Traverse, let's go ahead and get back in the car and cross that bridge because we're headed to the UP. Great. And then they came back and it was, so we're going to go back across the bridge. And as soon as we hit land, go ahead and take that first exit because we're hitting the docks and headed to Mackinac Island. And it was just sort of this fun way of taking us around literally the state and, moving us from one place or point in that way from one place to another. So if you want to get a little creative, you feel free, but clarity is more important than creativity for this course. All right. Be clear. That's so important. Okay. So that gets us through the introduction. Grab their attention, tell them who you are and what you're talking about. Tell them what you're going to do in this speech. Give them a 1-sentence summary. Tell them why they should care about it. And then give the preview. Move them into the body. Within the body, you see main points 1, 2, and 3. Note, there are not 2 main points. There are not 4 main points. There are 3. And your speech should have 3 as well. There's a lot of science behind that, but the short answer is it's a number people like. They can remember 3 things better than they can more than 3. And 2 is sometimes oversimplified, so we're sticking with 3. Now, once you go through your main points, the way you should do that is to keep a few things in mind. I don't know how much experience you have with formal outlining, but a couple things I'll say about it. 1, realize this is a formal outline. So this is what you will turn in. This does not need to be every word that you will say in your speech. It needs to be about 1 sentence for each item so that I can see that you have a good plan. Some people, though, will want to write out every single word they're going to say, and that's not a bad idea, especially if you're new to speaking. So I don't want you to read your speech, but if you write down every word you're going to say and then practice those words, by the time you actually sit down to record the final version of your speech, you probably are so familiar you won't need your notes much at all because you've seen it all. You've said it all. It's there. It's in your mind. It's on the paper. On the other hand, some people don't do enough and they just put down like a word for each thing. That's not really enough for at least me to see that you have a clear plan. Now, that may be something that you should do for yourself. When it comes to the speaking outline, that's different than the formal outline. I will never see your speaking outline or the notes that you have in front of you as you speak. And remember, you can have a physical piece of paper or you can have notes on your screen since you're recording. It's up to you how you want to do that. But notes are a good thing. I advise you to use notes. Just don't use them improperly. So that means don't read them. And that also means if you're using paper, don't hold them in one hand. For some reason, last semester, I had folks that had like a 2 monitor setup and their notes were on one screen, but their camera was on the other. And so when they were reading their notes, it was like, okay, so as you can see, we should really, and it's like, where are you looking? Why are you doing that? So give that some thought, practice, record it, watch it, and that will help you catch things like this that you may not really think about otherwise. So keep that in mind. What I will also say about a formal outline here and what you need to keep in mind is that we've got, main point 1, and then there's an A, a B, and then a C in parentheses. What I mean to tell you by that is if you have an A, and you must have a B. You have to have an A and a B at least. You can have an A through a Z if you want. That's up to you and how you like to break things down in your own mind. But remember, if you have an A, you need to have a B. If you have a 1, you need to have a 2. If you go even further than that, and you have like a superscript I, then you need II, whatever it is. It needs to be divided equally at least, or if it's not, just don't divide it. So you could do, A and B, but you wouldn't do A1, B. You could just take A1 and A and mush them into one point, or revise it into two subdivisions of A. The reason C is in parentheses again is because you don't have to have that. An A and a B is all that's required, but you can go as in depth as you want there to help you stay organized. That's the thing. Remember, I just said it a couple seconds ago. Clarity is more important than anything else. And if this helps you stay clear, you do you, whatever it takes. Then on each of these main points, you'll see a spot for evidence or supporting material, and then cite as you go. So as you already know, you're going to need to find the appropriate types and number of sources. I put this in here just for basically a placeholder. So if you know that, your journal source is going to go with main point 1, and a source from the New York Times is going with number 2, and a source from some other place is going with number 3, you might list those in your evidence area here. And that can help you keep up with what goes where. And if you have this in front of you, it will help you remember to cite that source. When we go to next week, I'll show you how I do this with this outline, in that I use colors with highlights. So, I will highlight the source, and then I will highlight what comes from the source in the same color. So when my eyes hit the text that has the color on it, like, okay, this is an important piece because it's cited from somewhere. It's, purple. And so where's the other purple thing? There it is. So according to, and then I can cite my source quickly. Again, I'll show you how that works next time, but definitely include them here. So 1, I can see you've got them, and 2, you can keep up with what goes where. After the evidence and supporting material, you've got a transition / and this is so critical, an internal review. And you've got a model that I give you here. Now that, move on to. Here's what that means. So when you are going from main point 1 to main point 2, it's not enough to say, next, I will talk about the lighting's effect on your environment. Instead, you need that internal review. Just like I told you before, you're going to sound like you're repeating yourself, and you will be, and that's good. So you would say something like, now that you know about the different types of lights, 1, let's move on, 2, and talk about how those lights will impact your environment. Great. Then when you get down here between 2 and 3, don't just go to 2, then 3, go all the way back. So you'll say, now that you know both the types of lights and how those lights impact your environment, let's finish this thing up by talking about how that lighting might look once it's recorded. And that's that. But you're bridging things. You're going from here to here. Now you're going from here to here to here. And it's just keeping up so the audience remembers how things link together. If your information doesn't connect in any way, you probably need to go back and revise the way that you're presenting that information. Maybe it's reordering points. Maybe it's shaping points a little bit differently so that they do connect better, fit together. And that will be, again, different for each individual. Beyond that, you see the same thing for all 3 main points, except there's no transition between 3 and the conclusion, because the review of statement of purpose is written like that transition. Now, listen, you'll see here, statement of purpose, right? You're going to review it. If you go back up to the attention getter, statement of purpose. By the end of this speech, you should. That's at the beginning. That's that tense. By the end, you should. If you go down here, after hearing this speech, you should. Copy and paste from the introduction. Just change the beginning. Same thing here with the thesis. So up here, if we said lighting is a critical element to making effective videos, then down here we could say something like, so clearly, or as you can now see, lighting is a critical element to making effective videos. Today, we talked specifically about 1, 2, 3, relist the main points, and then the closure. Here is something that's so important. Whatever you used as an attention getter, use it again as closure. So if you started that story, finish that story. Or if you use misdirection, you might say, at the beginning, I told you the story of Shirley, I think was her name. You may have thought I was going to talk about a serial killer or some terrible person, but instead we're all much more at risk of heart disease than we are being attacked and killed in our own home, something like that. To just tie it up. That's actually called ring structure. That comes from the ancient Greeks, a guy named Isocrates, not Socrates, Isocrates. And you hear this, you hear it called coming full circle. It's, if you think of a clock, you start in one place, you go around, and then you come back up to where you are, and you've gone completely around, full circle, and you've made the ring. So do that, whatever it was. If it's a question, ask it again, but now we should think a little differently because we have more information. If it was a joke, well, yeah, does it tell the joke again or be humorous again, if appropriate? But that will make us feel like we started with, a laugh and we've ended with a laugh. Or if you give that shocking statistic, 1 in 4 of you, then at the end, you can say at the beginning, I asked 1 in 4 of you will have this. Do you know if it's you? Most of you looked a little concerned, and I understand it's a serious topic, but being more aware of STDs and the ways that we can prevent them and be tested should put your mind at ease, right? Something like that. And that's going to be that. I mean, that's the end of it right there. That's the end of your speech. Now, the closure, in addition to just going back to the attention getter, should serve one more function, and that is what I call the applause cue. That should let us know as the audience if we can clap for you now or not. You've all been members of an audience where someone was giving a presentation and we thought they were finished, right? And people start doing the thing. I've done it as a professor lots of times. And so you may even get one full clap out and then they continue and you're like, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I thought there was a fly here. What is going on? So, give us that applause cue. If nothing else, you can use your voice to let us know that you're finished. Now, think about how news reporters do this. So if someone is reporting from a location outside of the studio, right? Let's say they're on Capitol Hill. They're not going to say things at the end like, all right, reporting from Capitol Hill, my name's Carl, back to you. They don't say it that way. They say it very specifically, and it's pretty common. Reporting live from Capitol Hill, I'm Carl Brown. It's got a cadence to it. And so if you wrap up your speech that way, that can really be effective. So if it's the 1 in 4 people, so at the beginning I told you 1 in 4 people have an STD. 1 in 4 of you has an STD. I asked if it was you. You weren't sure. But by knowing more about preventing STDs and being tested, we can rest comfortably. And you're done, right? That kind of language, that kind of cadence can signal to the audience, I'm finished. You can clap. This has come full circle. It's over. That's going to win over many more audience members than you may think, simply because it felt tied up at the end. So here's what you need to do with this information. Go back and look through all of the red text here. You may have questions. If you do, let me know. I'll be happy to answer those for you. Same thing with the evaluation form. Go back and look at this. Hopefully you've already downloaded everything, but you could just make this quickly available to you so that whenever you are practicing, you can use this. You can pull it out as a quick reference and almost like a checklist to make sure that you're doing everything you're supposed to do. And again, for some of these items, like the delivery aspects, verbal, nonverbal, we'll get into those in more depth next time, or actually probably not next time, but the time after. So just hang on to that, but give this outline some thought. Again, this is written, I wrote this and I don't use it because it's like, oh, I wrote it, must be amazing. I use it because, one, it's effective. I use this every single time I give a presentation, every time. So, I know it's effective. Also, I like that the evaluation form and the outline go together so that you have fewer unknown variables when you're planning and thinking about what kind of grade you might make, your performance level, what you need to work on, etc. So that's the thing for this week. check out the outline, check out the evaluation form. Then, just to jump back up here, don't forget that at the end of this week, here we are in week 4. So on the 12th, you'll need to submit those topics and sources. And again, use the worksheets that are in the course pack. Go back up above this schedule, and you'll see details about the assignment. All right. Otherwise, if you have questions, as always, let me know. If not, hope you have a great week. I don't know where you are today or where it is, but as you see on my screen, it's Friday at noon and it's snowing again. So while it looks pretty behind me, that's fake. So stay safe, stay warm, stay COVID free, and I will see you next time.